Now, the Christchurch earthquakes are a deadly reminder that a natural disaster can strike at any time. But in the north of the country, far from any fault lines, it's not earthquakes they're worried about, it's volcanoes. In Auckland, a new crater has just been discovered, and Mount Ruapehu's lake is heating up again, reminding us that volcano's not dead, it's just asleep. To talk about this, I'm joined in Wellington by GNS science volcanologist Gill Jolly. Good morning.
Good morning.
The temperature of the lake on Mount Ruapehu is going up and down. What does that tell us?
Well, we think what's happening in the top level of the volcano, there's a hydrothermal system, a bit like the geothermal fields further north, and something is supplying heat from depth to that, probably magma, and that heats up the geothermal system, the hydrothermal system, periodically. And we've seen this several times over the last few years. So about once a year it peaks to a high temperature, then it gradually comes back down again.
So if Ruapehu was going to erupt, would there be any indication beforehand?
We would expect at least some, if it was going to be a major eruption, maybe like the 95 eruption that people may remember. And the sort of indicators we would be looking for would be an increase in earthquakes underneath the volcano, and an increase with number, with time and size, and getting closer to the surface. We might see increases of gas coming out of the lake. So there's a number of things that we're monitoring for that we could actually measure and would give us an indication that an eruption might occur. However, on the other side, we've had eruptions more recently, like in 2007, which happened without any noticeable precursor indicators. So these are a little bit more difficult. They tend to be smaller than the 95-96 eruption, and they tend to be fairly short-lived. So the 2007 eruption, for example, only was just a bang over a couple of minutes, and then it went quiet after that.
Why can't we accurately predict eruptions? What instruments, if you like, would you need to predict an eruption?
One of the real problems with volcanoes is that they're inherently unpredictable. So we can look at what's underneath the ground by using our techniques, but we can't exactly see what's happening. I often say it's a bit like trying to do the weather forecast with your eyes closed, because you can measure what's going on, but you can't actually see directly where the magma is and if it's coming to the surface. You can infer that from the data that we're collecting. But Ruapehu for New Zealand is probably our best monitored volcano, and it's way up there in terms of world standard monitoring. So we've pretty much got everything we can to monitor Ruapehu, because it's our most active volcano at the moment. So we're doing a pretty good job by international best standards, but there's still these occasional eruptions which are really difficult to finger.
OK, let's move a little further north to Auckland now, and a crater's been found in Grafton, which is central Auckland for those who aren't from Auckland. How can a 1 kilometre crater only be found now?
Well, the problem is that, of course, with Auckland, it's very built up. So much of the volcanoes around Auckland, they're covered up, or some of them were actually quarried away in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Now, the Grafton volcano was built on fairly early on, and actually it was covered up by a subsequent eruption from the nearby Domain volcano. So a lot of the deposits, the lava flows and the ash from the new volcano that has been rediscovered is actually covered over by material from the later eruption of the Domain volcano.
What's the likelihood in our lifetime of one of Auckland's 50-odd dormant volcanoes erupting?
Well, there's been around about 50 eruptions from the Auckland volcanic field over a couple of 100,000 years. So you're looking at, on average, about an eruption every few thousand years. But of course, nature doesn't work like clockwork. So the last eruption was 600 years ago, which was Rangitoto. And we have no way of knowing whether we have to wait another 4,000 years before the next one, or whether it might happen next week or next year. So the likelihood of something happening is fairly low, but we have to be prepared for that, and that's why we're doing the research on the Auckland volcanic field, so we can understand how those volcanoes work.
OK, just quickly, Jill, with Auckland built on this volcanic valley, and Christchurch and Wellington are built on significant faults as well, does that make Dunedin our safest major city?
Yes, that's a good question. It depends how you define safe, I suppose. Clearly, there is a volcano in Dunedin, but it's millions of years old, so in terms of volcanic activity, you're pretty safe down there. But anywhere in the country, there are faults underlying the country. Less likely in places Dunedin, but as we found out in Christchurch, things can happen which have a longer return period, lower probability. It does happen.
All right. Gill Jolly, GNS Science volcanologist, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.